Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Reyna Silver Corp. Reyna trades on the Toronto Venture as RSLV and trades as RSNVF on the OTCQX in the US. We hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will also be available on demand in replay mode following today's webinar. Amvest is a specialist investment management corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resources sector. Q&A is very important aspect of the webinars. Please submit your questions and we'll ask them for you on behalf of you in real time. Important links to today's slide deck, company website, and stock pages can be found on the page as well. At the end of the webinar, please share your feedback here and submit it to management. It's an important part of the process. This call is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to sell or buy any security and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Presenting today is Jorge Monroy, the CEO of Reyna Silver. Jorge is the founder and managing director of Emerging Markets, a mining-focused investment company based in Hong Kong and which has participated in the financing of numerous TSX junior and mid-tier exploration and mining companies. He is a director of Prime Mining and Arabian Shield Resources. Also, we have with us Dr. Peter Megaw, Chief Exploration Advisor. Peter has more than 40 years of involvement in Mexican geology and is well known in the Mexican mining industry. He has been a frequent speaker at international academic and technical symposia. Peter and his team are credited with the significant discoveries at Platosa, Durango, which was owned by Exxon Resources, at Juanicipio, Fresnillo, Zacatecas, a joint venture between Fresnillo and Mkt Silver, and Poco Seco or Cinco de Mayo at Chihuahua, in Chihuahua, owned by Mkt Silver. Following today's formal presentation, members of Amvest Capital will ask questions of management. We also look forward to any attendee questions you send in. And I now will turn it over to Jorge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the Amvest team to give us the opportunity to present Reyna Silver this morning. And I also would like to welcome Peter Megaw, who's here with me. I'll be starting the presentation and then handing it over to Peter, who will walk us through the technical parts of the presentation. So maybe to give you guys a brief overview, especially for those of you for whom this may be your first time listening to the Reyna Silver presentation, I'll first mention that I will be making some forward-looking statements. So please do your own research. To give you a little bit of a background on Reyna Silver, we started the company in 2017. I am the founder of the company. I was very interested in looking for silver assets. At that time, I went to Peter Megaw, who's the co-founder of Mkt Silver, for some advice as to what might be a good way to approach investing in the silver exploration space. And Peter's feedback to me was, you want to focus on projects that have high grade and district scale potential. And as it happened at the time, Mkt Silver had two projects, Guigui and Batopilas, which are the projects that we're currently drilling. And at the time, Mkt Silver did not have the scope or the capital to advance them, so we did a deal with them. As part of that deal, Peter is part of our advisory board. We went public about 12 months ago. Actually, more like 15 months ago now. We have $11 million in the bank. We have 4 projects. Guigui and Batopilas are 2 main projects that we're actively drilling. We have a third project called Medicine Springs, which we are getting ready for which we're getting drill targets. and I'll discuss it with you as the presentation goes along. Guigui is the project that we started drilling earlier this year, and we just put out a significant press release, which we'll be discussing in this webinar. And then Batopilas, we also in the middle of a 10,000 meter drill campaign. We're about halfway through. We have put in the first 1,000 meters or so out in a press release, and that's a native silver former producer. And then at Medicine Springs, as I mentioned, we're advancing our drill targets. I'll show you a little bit of what our capital structure looks like. We have 100 million shares outstanding, 11 million in the bank. We have also a large number of warrants that are in the money, and we do have coverage from Red Cloud. The analyst at Red Cloud, there is Timothy Lee. You can see the email there if you wanted to reach out to him for research, and I know that he is preparing an update on the new drill results both at Guigui and Batopilas. So if you wanted to hear his thoughts on it, that's something you could do as well. So for those of you who don't know Peter, he is our chief technical advisor. As I mentioned, the co-founder of Mkt Silver. Peter did his PhD thesis at Santa Eulalia, which is the district where the Guigui project that we're drilling is at. Peter has a remarkable track record of discoveries. You can see a number of them mentioned here. Most notably the Juanicipio discovery for Mkt Silver, which is about to go into production as one of the highest grade silver mines anywhere in the world. He has also been the recipient of the 2017 Thayer-Lindsay Award. And the other technical advisor that I'll mention is Doug Kerwin, who was one of our early investors. He's a former VP of exploration of Ivanhoe Mines, and we're delighted to have him also a co-recipient of the 2004 Thayer-Lindsay Award. So with that context, I would like to pass the microphones to Peter, who is going to walk us through the significance of both the drill results at Guigui and Batopilas over the last few weeks. So Peter, great seeing you, and please take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Jorge, and welcome everybody. It's always fun to talk about Reyna Silver and our Guigui project to start with in Chihuahua. Start by clarifying that high grade is important, but high margin is really what we're all about. So we're looking for things that will make money under almost the worst conditions you can think of and are big enough to last at least 2 market cycles. So our Guigui project is here in the southern part of the Chihuahua, of the Santa Eulalia district. The west camp over here and the east camp over here are mining areas that were in production for 300 years, produced over 500 million ounces worth of silver over that period of time, from a little over 51 million tons of ore, averaging a little better than 10 ounces per ton silver and about 15% combined lead and zinc. A lot of the work that I did on my PhD suggested that the source for the district was somewhere in between these 2 camps, and the work we're doing now is focused right in this area to try to find that. So when we look at carbonate replacement deposits, which is a mouthful, so we call them CRDs, these are deposits that are zoned from an intrusive stock through what we call skarn, which is high temperature silicate alteration over which sulfide mineralization is imprinted. So you wind up with very large volume mineralized bodies right next to the stock. And then you have a series of what we call mantos and chimneys, which are long ribbons or tubes of high-grade massive sulfide mineralization that extends away from them. The historic production of Santa Eulalia, that 500 million ounces of silver, came from this part of the system. This model has been field tested in a number of important districts, not least of which being Arizona mining here not far from where I'm sitting right now, that South 32 bought for $1.5 billion in 2017. This whole half of the system has not been found, and this is what we're looking for. So we're looking for the source intrusion and the large high-grade skarn surrounding it, and potentially some additional high-grade lead, zinc, silver rich massive sulfide offshoots from that. Sorry, I'm learning how to use this new system. So here's another way of looking at it. Here's a slice through Santa Eulalia as opposed to a slice through an idealized system, which I just showed you, which was in part based on Santa Eulalia. But here's the historic part of the district with indications saying you want to look in this direction to find more. So what we are looking for is this hypothetical intrusion underlying pre-mineral volcanic rocks. So the host limestones shown here in blue are covered by pre-mineral volcanics. They're highly altered. We've mapped them. We've geochem the little fractures that come through them, looking for leakage from this hypothetical source at depth. And that's where we started drilling back in earlier part of this year. These green holes that you see here, these green dots that you see, are the holes that we drilled. We started in this area and worked our way around this way. These are historic holes drilled in the eastern part of the district, the extreme southern part of the district by Mag Silver. So we're focusing in this area right in here between the two historic camps. And as Jorge mentioned, the press release that we put out last week shows this drill hole, actually these 3 drill holes that we've put in this area right up in here. First hole, 23, clipped a little bit of mineralized skarn affecting a felsite sill, so that's an offshoot from the kind of magma body we're looking for. Hole 26 went through a quartzite rhyolite, so that's getting closer to the style of intrusive that we're looking for. It got some mineralized skarn along the lower contact, affecting the rhyolite itself. And then hole 28, which is the important hole, cut a thick zone of, first of all, the quartzite rhyolite, and then a very thick layer of skarn that is in turn mineralized by multiple stages of pretty high-grade sulfide mineralization. Pointing out that this intrusion that we found looks like it's close to what we're expecting is the source, but we're still expecting one intrusive phase earlier than this. These intrusions evolve over time. They get more and more felsic. They get more and more concentrated in terms of the metal components that are in them. This looks like this rock was affected by that fluid coming from a related intrusion, but a slightly younger phase. So what did we cut? Well, we cut a big wide zone, almost 55 meters with intermittent mineralization within it. So the average grade over that whole distance isn't terribly exciting. But when you get down into the lower part, we have a consistent zone, almost 16 meters, with some pretty respectable grades, especially with respect to zinc. But then there are 4 zones within that, one of which has got some good silver numbers, as much as 500 grams. We don't know what the actual thickness of these intercepts are because we've only got one hole in it. So we're talking about core width. We're not talking true thickness. We haven't determined that yet. Zone at the top with very high silver. Then we go into a zone with very high zinc, then a zone with very high copper, and then a zone with pretty good zinc and lead. So what we're seeing is 4 major pulses of mineralization affecting this thick skarn, which in turn we can see multiple stages of skarn alteration in it as well. So when we look at this stuff, here is what that skarn looks like. This lime green that you're seeing, or pistachio green, is a skarn mineral called epidote. And you can see here it is heavily replaced by galena, which is very, very rich in silver. So this is the zone, this is the sample that gave us better than half a kilogram of silver. Deeper in the hole, here we are in the zinc zone, so more of that same green with some browns, which are probably another skarn mineral called diopside, and then thick, very coarse grained, massive sphalerite. So this is very high grade, concentrated zinc when you see this kind of thing. So that's basically the Guigui story. We went looking for the source. That was about a 1 kilometer diameter target within an area about 3 by 5 kilometers. We hit something that looks like it's very close to it on hole number 13. So we immediately rolled over into our next stage of drilling, and we are continuing right now to follow up on that intercept. So pretty exciting times for Guigui. Looks like we've cornered what we're looking for, and now we just have to look around this area to find out where it came from, in which direction we expect it to get bigger, and as we work our way upwards and outwards from that, we have a 1,200 meter thick section of limestone that is already demonstrated to be very favorable for mineralization in the historic part of the camp where they mined through the whole section. So there's good possibility for not only more proximal skarn, but also for very high grade offshoots, more chimneys and mantos in this thick limestone section. So if you can't tell, I'm pretty excited by the results from Guigui. I've been working in this place and hypothesizing this intrusion for about 40 years, so it's really nice to see it come to fruition. Our other major project where we're drilling... Yes.
Peter, sorry to interrupt you, but I was wondering if maybe before you move to Batopilas, if you don't mind, a couple of questions that I've been getting a lot during the last couple of weeks, and since we have you in these slides, people asking, what are your thoughts on the silver grade? Are you likely to encounter higher silver grades as you go up in the system, and as you look for where for the kind of mineralization we're looking for? And if you can maybe just give your thoughts on that, and that's a question that I have been receiving constantly. So since we have you, if you don't mind, maybe sharing your thoughts on that.
I'll be happy to share my thoughts on that. So here is our CRD exploration model, and typically what you see is zoning, so that close to the intrusion, your copper and zinc grades are higher. As you work your way outwards, the copper tends to drop out, lead and silver become more and more dominant, and as you work your way upwards and outwards, silver becomes more and more dominant. When I say dominant, I'm being very careful because all of the metals are present from here all the way to the end. It's just the proportion of the individual metals that changes. And so normally you would expect to see your highest silver grades out here in the distal part. As you work your way into the more proximal part, your volume goes up dramatically. So you have much larger mineralized bodies amenable to mining by bulk underground techniques. Your silver grades do drop, your gold may come up, your copper will come up. But what's interesting about what we're seeing, what's important to understand is that's the characteristic of essentially a single pulse of the system. So every pulse will show a evolution from, say, copper through to silver. But what we're seeing down here in our hole, in hole 28, is we're seeing a whole series of these zones. We're seeing a very high silver zone, high zinc, high copper, high zinc and lead again. We're seeing evidence that multiple pulses, each one which would show that same kind of zonation, have affected this rock. So when I say we have room for this thing to keep growing, wherever this is, right in here, we're going to follow that back towards its source. But at the same time, we have 1,200 meters of limestone, which is the favorable host rock for the historic part of the district. And there's every reason to think that there could be big bodies coming off the top of this that are mineralized and will contain at least as high grade silver as we're encountering down here in that high silver zone. So the potential to play both ends against the middle is very high. So it's a trade-off between very high grade, which you would expect in this part, versus very high volume, which you would expect in this part. And sort of the balance between the two of them makes them both very, very attractive targets. It's one thing to mine, just throwing numbers out, 2,500 tons a day of something that runs 10 ounces silver. It's another thing altogether to mine 10,000 tons a day of something that averages 5 ounces of silver, along with 10% zinc, 8% lead, 1.5% of copper. So that's the beauty of a polymetallic system, is the zoning and the ability to target where you are within that overall zoning.
Great.
So did that hopelessly confuse you, or did that answer your question?
No, that was very good. It was great to be able to have it, have that explanation for everybody, and also to have it captured on video. So thanks a lot, Peter.
A pleasure. So let's move to Batopilas if there's no more questions on Guigui for now.
No, that was the main one. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some more at the end.
So Batopilas, which is where we're also drilling right now, is the highest grade silver deposit ever found in Mexico. Mexico's produced 25% of all the silver ever mined in human history. It's got more than half of the world's really big silver deposits, including the biggest. And Batopilas is probably, at 300 million ounces, it doesn't fall into that super giant deposit scale yet, but the grades are ridiculous. The mineralized bodies essentially consist of Brillo pads of crystallized native silver. This is a beautiful example of it. But these ores historically ran to as high as 75% silver. The average grade of mineralization mined from 1878 to 1913 was about 1.5% to 2% silver. So that's extremely high grade. You don't have to find a lot of that to make a major discovery. So in the Batopilas district, which has been active since the 1660s, we've consolidated most of the district, except for this claim, which is essentially mined wall to wall, and these claims right in here, which sit underneath the town. And that's where we're working, trying to find what we believe to be the extension of this system. This stack of silver bars right here, each one of which weighs 25 kilograms, represents 1 month's production in 1906. So 350,000 ounces produced in a month. Extremely high grade, more than 30 known veins. Most of the activity in the district was in the Spanish colonial era, and then in the late 1800s, the Batopilas Mining Company, financed out of New York, came in and drove a tunnel underneath the Spanish workings. Their goal, actually, as I'll show you in a second, was to extend underneath the whole district, but the Mexican Revolution intervened in 1913, and they were put out of business. So their plans to get underneath the whole district were essentially aborted, and what we're doing is picking up from there. One of the really interesting things that we're seeing in our initial work is, although this is historically a silver-only district, we've started coming up with some pretty good gold numbers, not just in our trenching program from last year, where we got as much as, I think, 26 grams gold, but we got 21 grams gold in our first round of drilling, which we announced back in early September. So there's an interesting component of the district that's unraveling now, or unfolding now, that we're just beginning to understand. So this shows you the district. This actually is the 1878 map of the district with all the old claims and the known veins, and the plan to bring the Porfirio Diaz tunnel underneath all of this area. They only completed this part, so they only got to about 5 of the 30 veins that are known in the district. So this is what they completed. And what we've done basically is project all of these veins off to the north and to the northeast, looking for the continuation not only where the Spaniards missed it, but where the Batopilas mining company didn't get. So we came up here last year into this area up in here, ran a trench program. We got some big chunks of native silver out of outcrop. Jorge's got one in his hands right now. I'm surprised he got it through airport security, but good on you for that, Jorge. And that's the kind of thing that they would have mined, but mined by the ton rather than a few kilograms. So we did that trenching up in this area. We did some drilling. Our best intercept was when we were drilling for MAG, we got 1.7 meters of 2.5 kilos silver, but part of that was a zone that ran 19 kilograms, so 1.9% silver. So our program for Reyna started in the second quarter of this year, drilling out in this area to the northeast, based on where we did our trenching last year, where we got the native silver we just talked about and high-grade gold up in this area. And so we're drilling underneath the best trenches that we got, and we got in our sampling, we got as much as 42 kilograms, so 4% silver, and almost 25 grams of gold, again, from this northern area up here. So this is our best drill hole, 21-30. And 30 simply means it's the 30th drill hole drilled on the property, not Reyna's 30th drill hole. It was our second hole, actually. We got 3.2 meters that averaged 703 grams of silver, but that includes a 20 centimeter zone similar. This is part of it that ran 10 kilograms silver. So this is high-grade native silver right in here, fitting in this part of the vein. And it ran also 0.3 grams gold. So this is the first extension of this projection of this vein. It's more than 2 kilometers past the last place it was ever mined. It's important to understand that the chutes in this district go from narrow 1 centimeter calcite veins that you follow, and then over the space of less than 10 meters, they'll open up into 1 and 2 meter wide bodies of this crystallized native silver. So that they open up very quickly, and then they run for 30 to 80 meters and they close down again. But they're about 350 meters down the axis. So they're steeply inclined chutes. So when you get any native silver, it's telling you, I need to drill some more holes right around here to see if I'm where the chute is, because there's good reason to believe there is one. So that's effectively going to be our next round of drilling. Hole 34, which is further to the northeast, this is up in the gold zone. We got 1.5 meter core length that graded almost 5 grams gold and 10 grams silver, but that included a 25 centimeter section that ran 28.7 grams gold and 59 silver. Again, this is a new zone. We're seeing a mixture of high-grade gold and high-grade silver, and the mixture of the two suggesting we're either looking at overprinting or some kind of zoning to the district that hasn't been recognized before. We're here for silver, but I don't think we're going to kick the gold out of bed for eating crackers. These are the results that we got in graphical form. I've just talked about them. But again, very, very, very good gold grades in these holes. I mean, even in that hole with the high silver, we got almost 9 grams gold, and then that ridiculously high silver. So pretty exciting results for our first batch of drilling. We hadn't really thought about putting out a release as quickly as we did, but when you cut native silver in a hole like this, and you're in a silver district where everybody knows native silver is what people are looking for, the cat is basically out of the bag. The dogs in the street know that you've cut native silver, so you've got to get that press release out. So that's why we made a release on only 1,050 of our 10,000 meter program. It's a good reason for having had to do it. So over the next period of months, what will you see as catalysts for Reyna? Well, Guigui has rolled. We've completed our 12,000 meter phase 1 program, and we're very pleased with the results, having found what looks to be a near source, well mineralized and extremely well altered intrusive. We've got another 8,000 meters that's been given to us by the board in phase 2. We're hoping that if we're successful, they will continue to support additional drilling. At Batopilas, our initial campaign of 10,000 meters commenced this last spring. We've only put out results for the first 1,000 meters. So the rig is turning, and look forward to more news from Batopilas. In our Medicine Springs project in Nevada, which we haven't talked about much, it's a Guigui type project, but instead of being a carbonate replacement where part of the system has been explored, at Medicine Springs, only the very tip of that most distal silver zone has seen any kind of historic small-scale mining and prospecting. We got out there. It looked to us like the system was much bigger than people thought, and that we were not very high in the we were very high in the stratigraphy, so there should be a good thick package of limestone comparable to that thick section that we have at Guigui for mineralization to work our way up and out from the source. At Medicine Springs, we get to work our way back towards the source. So our goal is to continue moving this forward. We've done a systematic district scale sampling program. We're waiting for the results on that. We hope that gets us targeted. We'll do a LiDAR survey, and then we hope to be able to drill there with an initial 7,000 program starting sometime second quarter next year. Basically, this is the kind of company that Reyna would like to become. I mean, we're sitting down here right now, but these are all companies in the same business that we are, looking for silver and the kind of success that your company can have based on drilling success. And if you look at who the big companies are up here, they are looking for large-scale, high-grade systems with high margin. And the biggest one, it's easy for me to say this, is Mag Silver, and we would certainly like to follow in Mag's footsteps with the two properties that essentially were the victims of Mag's success early on. Great board. Peter Jones, who used to be CEO of Hudbay Minerals, is our chairman. You've met Jorge Ramiro, who's our CEO. We have a very strong team in Mexico led by Ariel Navarro and Rene Ramirez right here. I've worked with Rene for about 30 years, I think, at this point. I've known him since he was an undergraduate student. He and I have stomped a lot of rocks in carbonate replacement systems together. I am very comfortable that Rene is running things. Manuel Ruiz, I've spent only a little less time with than Rene. He's running the project out at Batopilas. And then we have Susana and Jorge, who are young geos with 6-7 years experience working for us and backing up the team. So it's a strong team. They understand the neighborhood. They understand the projects that we're working on. And they're a pleasure to work with. So you can get much more information from Jorge at reynasilver.com, this address right here, or you can get more information right now by asking us some questions.
And then maybe before the questions, I'll just also, talking about Batopilas, we do have a book called The Silver Magnet, which is a book that speaks about basically the whole story of how Batopilas got established, the Batopilas Mining Company. It's in English. It's incredibly well written. Gives you a good sense of what we're trying to do. Of course, we're doing a much more modernized version of it. But if anybody would like to have a copy, you can write to that email, Jorge at reynasilver.com, and we'll send you a copy.
It's a fascinating read. It's a real period piece in terms of what it was like to go to a place like Batopilas in the late 1880s, late 1870s, and basically carve out this spectacular mining district that had been laying dormant at that point for almost 100 years. important also to point out that it's only half the story, because this is the story as told by the family who were out there, and the other and they were milking their shareholders from New York while they were mining, and they put out this idea that mining was feast or famine, that they were either in massive high grade or that they were completely bereft and out of ore. It turns out that actually they were sending about half of their production, instead of over the mountains to Chihuahua and back to New York, they sent them down the river to the west coast of Mexico, and then it went on a boat to their private bank accounts in San Francisco. So the estimates are that they probably siphoned about half the production off for themselves, which changes the flavor of the boom and bust cycle that's presented in the silver magnet. So it's an interesting read, but it's only half the story.
Right.
Thank you for the presentation, Jorge and Peter. And we can now open up to questions. And you'll see this little area highlighted on your screen. If you want to submit some questions, we'll make sure to get them answered. At Batopilas, what is the focus extending on mined veins to depth below historic workings, or on known veins or new veins that were never mined?
I would have to say it's a little of both. I mean, so far we haven't gone to depth. So far we've projected known veins into unknown territory, where we have found continuations both in the trenches and in the drilling. As we get more comfortable with the ability to do deep drilling, this is a topographically challenging area. We're working using man-portable rigs and things like that. Once we do that, we'll be happy to go deeper, because one of the historic facts of the district is that the part that was mined from where the Spaniards found it in outcrop at the top of the mountain to the bottom of the deepest mine that the Batopilas Mining Company was working in at the time Pancho Villa's soldiers came up and smashed the hydroelectric plant that ran the pumps that allowed them to mine about 250, 300 meters below the river level. There was no apparent zoning over 700 meters vertically. So we have every reason to believe that the mineralization can continue to considerable depth. We just want to get comfortable with where we are in the near surface environment before we start going deep.
Got it. And what depth would you be considering for upcoming drill programs?
Oh, we're thinking about trying to put some holes in anywhere 250 to 600 meters below where we're cutting mineralization, or where we know mineralization has been cut before. A lot of it is drilling geometry. Again, this is fairly extreme topography. So the depth that you can get to depends a lot on how far down the mountain you can start your drill hole.
Got it. Sorry, I just realized I had the wrong mic on the system. And then one more question on Batopilas. Like, when would you expect further drill results to be released?
So I think, we're going to be making that assessment in the next few weeks. But, we think definitely before, there's a good chance we have something within this month.
Yep. Okay, great. And then at Guigui, I'll push to this slide. Someone was asking, how close is the property boundary to hole number 28? And will you be drilling towards or away from the property line?
So here's the scale right here. So that's about a kilometer right there. So hole 28 sits right in here.
Yep.
So about a kilometer. So that hole is about 400 meters from the property line in terms of where it went in. We have no idea which direction it goes from here, but we're comfortable that we've got the lion's share of the target under control.
Got it. And who are some of the neighbors with surrounding claims here?
Private Mexican company over here, and the largest mining company in Mexico over here. They operate the San Antonio mine. That's Grupo Mexico.
Got it. And then when like on drilling here, when would you expect kind of further results to be released? Hard to say.
Again, these days it's a question of how long it takes to drill the holes. You know, we've just released 13 holes, and those took us 8-9 months to drill, plus get results back for. Typically, for a project of this magnitude, our goal would be to release holes in batches rather than sort of hole by hole. So I think it'll probably be sometime into at least first quarter of next year before we have the next results from Guigui.
Yeah.
Based on what I know right now.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add one thing from what Peter said is, you know, earlier in the year, both the you know, because of operation difficulties and you know, it was taking very long to get the assays back. I mean, that has improved tremendously in the last 2 to 3 months. So, you know, the turnaround time is a lot better. So, you know, we're hoping that as long as, you know, things stay relatively stable and there's no, you know, major disruptions from COVID, which, you know, in Mexico, it seems like they somehow have it under control. You know, we should be able to move at a better pace.
Yep. And then so
we've already started drilling the next you know, the next stage. Started a few weeks ago.
Great.
So we're well on our way.
And then yes, someone asked a question about, you know, how would you manage the answers to people who are expecting a big, you know, economic success grade intersection versus a geologically successful intersection, the discovery you've had?
Well, the simple answer is you have to walk before you can run. And so we started off with an area 3 by 5 kilometers where we were looking for something about 1 kilometer in diameter. We think we've gotten pretty close to that. So we'll just keep drilling and explore methodically. The prize here, I mean, it's important to put the prize in perspective, because if this is a district that's produced over 500 million ounces of silver, and and that's only from half the system. So the other half of the system stands to reason may have maybe equivalently endowed. So to do that, I mean, for that kind of a target, you can take your time and you can do things systematically and right to prove that the system is there. So we're extremely happy to have had, this is the best drill hole that's been drilled in this district in probably 50 years. Mm-hmm. So you know, we'll take this as step one as we move forward.
Right. And then assuming everything goes to plan, like when would, you know, you be thinking you have enough drilling to produce a resource? I know there's a lot of work to do geologically still, but that was a question someone submitted.
Well, I appreciate the desire to be drilling off a resource. There's nothing I would rather be doing. Resources take a lot of holes to drill and a lot of time. So typically, if you look at the range of what it takes to go from discovery to having a resource and being in production, you're talking 10 to 15 years. So we're still a number of years away from having a resource we can talk about. But you know, again, you got to take this a step at a time.
Yep.
And you know, Stu, maybe one comment that I'll make also, just to put the drill campaign into context. You know, I think we'll have spent about 2.5 million for the stage 1, you know, for the 12,000 meters. You know, we still have 11 million in the bank, so it's a substantial amount of money, enough to do you know, quite a bit more drilling even past the next 8,000 meters. You know, and you know, at some point when we, you know, when we zero into something that you know, that's you know, that looks more like what we're looking for, of course we'll be in a position to raise more money and to to go at that target more aggressively.
Yeah. And so that kind of leads to a financing question. So you're fully funded for quite some time to adapt the drill program depending on the result.
Yeah. So roughly speaking, what we have is by the time we finish the drilling this year, or maybe let's put it this way. But by the time January, February comes along, and we'll have drilled close to 20,000 meters at Guigui, probably the 10,000 at Batopilas. So having drilled 30,000 meters, we'll probably still have 8.5 million Canadian in the bank, which is enough to do, let's say, another 30,000 meters of drilling without going to the market. As I mentioned, actually a large number of our warrants are in the money, and they do get exercised from time to time, so they contribute to the treasury. But the large number of them are still not been exercised. Those expire in the IPO warrants expiring in June of 2022. So during those 6 months, I expect the rate of conversion will accelerate, and so we're in a very healthy position financially, and I think that's also very important for people to understand. We're not living or dying by the next drill hole. At Batopilas, I think that the flow of news will be more constant than at Guigui. We're drilling in stages, and we do have approval from the board to drill Medicine Springs next year. But that will have to happen towards the summertime because of the snow situation. So again, maybe going back to what Peter said, just the price is big in all three of our projects. That's the philosophy of the company is to look for big silver projects, and I think so far so good.
Mm-hmm. And then someone just asked, is the $11 million cash Canadian dollars or US dollars?
Yeah, Canadian. Unfortunately, I wish it was US.
And,
although Canadian dollar is strengthening, which is great.
And then would you consider adding another drill rig at Guigui, or would that be kind of going too fast to figure out like how the geology is working?
Yeah, so we this drill campaign we did have 2 drill rigs. At the moment, we've gone to 1 drill rig, and what we're gonna do to refine our target is some additional geophysics. I don't know if Peter, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, be happy to. So now that we've pegged down where we think the source of the system is, or is very close to us, we can think about, well, the first thing we've done is to go back and reevaluate all of our existing geophysics, because we inherited some very sophisticated geophysics from MAG that had never been drilled. So now that we understand what some of the features are that you can see in the geophysics mean, we have what we call ground truth in the business. We're reevaluating all of those results and looking to see if there's some other techniques that we should apply to the property. It's really opportune at the moment, like this year, next year, to think about geophysical techniques like audio-magnetotellurics, which use the Earth's natural magnetic field and cosmic radiation as the signal that they use geophysically. It's a very deep-seeing system with pretty good resolution, and with the high sunspot activity that we're seeing at the moment and these big solar flares like we just had last weekend, those pump an enormous signal in. So this is a really good time to do this kind of system. We've used it here and on similar kinds of systems in the past. And now that we have a very targeted area that we want to use it in, we'll probably do that before we bring a second rig onto the property.
Mm-hmm.
And at Batopilas, we're on 1 rig, but I've, as of, I think as of last week, we've added additional personnel to start, looking at more drill targets, generating more drill targets. Also, the best time to drill at Batopilas is basically starting now. This is their dry season. And, So we do have that very much in mind to as soon as we see the opportunity to add a second drill rig there.
Mm-hmm. And someone was asking, could Guigui be on the same scale as Juanicipio or even bigger due to the higher grades?
Oh, there's a forward-looking question, if I've ever heard one. You know, I got to say, Juanicipio is a billion-ounce silver discovery, and that's, you know, we have to find, to beat that, we have to find more than another 50% for the district, and then for Guigui itself to hold that much silver, we got to have another 50% on top of that. So I think it's fair to say that we probably don't have the equivalent of Juanicipio on our hands, but you know, it's early days. You can't tell. In some of these systems, the source zone is substantially larger than the distal part, which is what's already been found here. So the potential for a very large deposit here, I think, is still very good. Mm-hmm. But you're comparing apples and oranges. These are not the same deposit type.
Sure. I saw a video.
It's like comparing a rhino to a hippo. They can be pretty close to the same size, but they're different beasts.
Yeah, yeah. So I saw a video of you, Peter, recently. I think you were showing in some of the kind of limestone caves where the old miners had been. Would that be in this, like the blue limestone section? Yeah. That would have been kind of the video you below the surface a bit.
Those caves sit right up here. And those are those caves are actually old mine workings. They were carved out from the essentially alteration or exhaust from the system that deposited all of this lead, zinc, silver mineralization here. There was still manganese and silver left that got pumped into the limestone, and that stuff was mined for 200 years for smelter flux. For the lead smelter that used to exist on the outskirts of Chihuahua that has now been decommissioned.
Got it. One last question before I pass to Artie is, you kind of touched on this earlier with the comp slide, but you know, would you intend to replicate the mag silver template or stay on the left side of the Lassonde curve?
Well, I think the Lassonde curve is a path that a project goes down. If it's successful, it's a question of where you get off the Lassonde curve, either as the explorer or developer or an investor. And so we certainly would like to drive it up the exploration excitement side of the curve. Once we're there with a discovery, we can figure out what we want to do with it from there. But, you know, we're explorers. We're not developers. This is what we're looking for, is big company kind of targets. So we would expect either sell, be bought out, or wind up, you know, if we follow the Mag Silver model with a 44% essentially passive junior interest in a company where someone else is doing all the heavy lifting.
And, you know, maybe if I can add...
That's a question we can answer at the top of the Lassonde curve. Thank you.
No, if I can add, just, you know, in the kind of silver market that we have now, I mean, you see a company like Silvercrest that, you know, has an incredible market cap, you know, almost as big as that market cap of some mid-tier gold producers. So, you know, we are in a particularly beneficial market for that, you know, that really does value discoveries. I think part of it speaks to the fact that there are so few silver discoveries. You know, there aren't, you know, 2 or 3 Silvercrest. There aren't 2 or 3 Juanicipios. So, you know, I think it's also going to be very much dependent in the market. And I don't know what everybody else thinks, but it's certainly the market is looking very favorable for silver for at least for the next few years.
Yep. Sorry, one more question came in. Could you tell us more about your plans for Medicine Springs in Nevada? You earlier mentioned there was 7,500 meters of drilling. How many holes would that be? And, you know, what kind of targets are you looking for there?
Yeah, so we do have an approval from the board to do that drilling. And you know, we're in the next few months, we're going to have a strategic review of our plans for Medicine Spring and our budgets, you know, just in light of the drill results that we have. But at the moment, we're focused on generating the targets, and you know, we do have the intention of drilling this project. Like I say, you know, I think realistically, by the time the snow melts and we get our permits sometime during next summer or fall. And then in terms of the plans and the kind of targets, maybe I'll leave it to Peter to mention what he sees.
Okay, well, at Medicine Springs, this is what's known of the system, way up here. So it's veins and small-scale replacements in relatively unfavorable host rocks. Regionally, we think we're right on top of the Ely limestone, which is a big, thick limestone which hosts 2 or 3 very large CRD systems in the same general neighborhood. So we're using what we can find here to try to track back in this direction. So at Guigui, we're trying to find this and work our way outward. Here, we're trying to find our way back to this. So our drilling program, depending on what the orientation of all of this happens to be, could be a series of relatively shallow holes, presumably getting deeper as we get closer to the source. But we will start by trying to track what we know down into the favorable host rock that the regional stratigraphy tells us should be there. So our targets initially will be in a situation, in a position approximately equivalent to this. And then it's basically going to be what the geometry of what we find tells us we have to do. So our first holes, I mean, there's a number of 125-meter holes on the property where they drilled off a small, low-grade oxide silver deposit here back in the 1980s that they thought they could make into an open pit. We think that's leakage from something deeper. Again, 150 meters is the deepest hole on the property, so we got a lot of room to go. So there'll be 300 to 500-600 meter holes probably first thing out the chute. We may just put one hole in at the beginning to figure out where that deep limestone is and what its contact relationship is with what we can see, so we know whether we're looking at an inclined dipping contact or whether it's relatively horizontal. So that's the way we'll approach it.
Thanks for that. Pass to Artie.
Thank you. In Batopilas, you guys mentioned some inferred veins, and you said that you guys projected the current veins, and that's how you come up with that. I'm wondering what led you guys to interpret those inferred veins. You guys drilled, or is it the structural mapping? What helped you to come up with that?
It was a combination of the historic workings, which followed the structures for considerable distances, and projecting those, combined with a Worldview 3 hyperspectral satellite alteration imagery study that gave us some projections of those linear features, or the structures that had controlled the veins have an alteration signature that we can recognize. We could trace them out into this area that was actually fairly heavily covered. It wasn't thick cover, but because the hill slope is steep, there's just cover everywhere. So we projected them into an area that we could get to. We did some trenching with a backhoe. We found the structures in outcrop with native silver. That piece that Jorge showed you came from outcrop. That's how we tracked them, and now we're drilling below that to see. We're obviously seeing that works, and now we'll start drilling some longer holes to look for parallel blind structures, because when you look at the historic part of the district, the veins are spaced anywhere from about 50 to 100 meters apart. So if your hole is designed properly, you may be able to clip multiple structures with a single hole.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And going back to Guigui, after this current discovery hole, have you changed your phase 2 drilling pattern? And what does it look like? Can you give us some rough numbers? These phase 2 drill holes, are they, how many meters they are apart from this current discovery hole?
Okay, so yes, we've changed our drilling program in the sense that we've changed it and we haven't, because our initial idea with phase 1 was to get ourselves focused in a certain part of the district, and that what we were going to drill after that was going to depend on where that focus was and what it told us. So we have more than 40 drill pads permitted in this area out in here, in this 3 by 5 kilometer area. So because of what we've hit here, we'll be focusing our work here in the next stage. Our first significant step out on this is a 500-meter offset.
Got it.
Well,
Okay.
thanks again to you, Peter and Jorge at Reyna, and for your presentation update. And once again, we do value attendee feedback. So please, a reminder to share it here. Something should pop up on your screen now. The on-demand replay will be available in about an hour via the same link you received to join today's webinar. We hope you'll join us again for future webinars, and you can find a full calendar of upcoming webinars as well as a library of replays at amvestcapital.com/webinars. Thanks again and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.